Dodge TV studios with Terry Bell for today's community comment.
Thank you very much, Jake, and welcome everyone to Community Comment. My name is Terry Bell, and our guest today is Congressman Glen Grothmann. We'll be talking about all kinds of matters. If there's anything you would like to talk to the Congressman about or address and make a comment to him, you can reach us by calling 920-887-9595. That's our talk and text line, 920-887-9595. You can also call 885-4446. Congressman Grothmann, welcome to Community Comment.
Well, glad to be on the show.
Thank you so much. It's good to have you here. Let's jump right in. The military action in Iran. There's been lately a lot of disagreement over whether we should be there and how it got started. I guess, where is your position? How do you explain why this is happening right now?
Well, it was a tough call by President Trump. I respect his call. You know, it is possible that if he wouldn't have done anything, nothing bad would have happened for 6 months or 4 years or 6 years. But Iran is a country that makes no bones about it. They're trying to enrich more uranium. They want to make nuclear weapons, and they want to wipe Israel and the United States off the map, which means sometime we were going to have to deal with problems caused by Iran. That sometime might have been in 5 months. That sometime might have been 5 years. But the earlier we dealt with it, the easier it would have been. They're right now making about 100 new missiles a month. In a few months, maybe that'll be 200 missiles a month. We're already in a position in which the Arab countries, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, do not have enough anti-missile weapons to shoot them down, and Israel doesn't. Okay? And waiting for them to build another 1,000 or 2,000 missiles is only going to make that situation more difficult. And God forbid, but someday they'd have nuclear weapons. And I think President Trump said, this might not be the most popular thing now, but it is going to have to be dealt with sooner or later. And the sooner we deal with it, the cheaper it will be. The cheaper it will be not only in monetary terms, but, of course, in number of lives lost. So that's where we are right now, and hope it'll work out well. I do not know yet whether President Trump is going to want entirely new government in Iran. I would assume he's going to want a situation in which it is not run by a bunch of mullahs who are publicly saying we want to wipe Israel and the United States off the map.
When you think about the end of this, what would a win look like to you?
Well, it seems to me we need a more Western-friendly country, a country that you can trust will not start building missiles again right away so that in a year or 3 years they can begin to fire them at Israel. I think it should be a country where they are shooting all their protesters. The press reports are that over 30,000 protesters were murdered in the last few months, and I think we want some sort of protection for them. And like I said, going back to if we can say such a thing, a normal Middle Eastern country, a country like Morocco or Egypt or something.
I believe you're calling from Fond du Lac this morning?
Actually, I happen to be at something in Texas right now.
Oh, okay.
So, and I will point out, by the way, I did fly out yesterday, and I know there's so many reports about how difficult it is to get through the airports. I have flown out of Milwaukee twice in the last week, and both times I walked right through. Either one person was ahead of me or nobody was ahead of me. And when I got back last week from Washington, same thing. There were maybe 2 people ahead of me in line to fly back to Milwaukee.
We'll be talking about more of that in a bit. I'm glad you brought that up. I guess what I was getting at is, what are you hearing from people back home in the district about the situation in Iran?
I talked to a lot of people about it. To be honest, first of all, it surprises me the degree to which people don't bring anything up. Because, of course, we have 2 things that are such big news stories, the ICE agents and how the government's going to deal with them, and what's going on in Iran. And I am genuinely surprised the number of people who just say, you're doing a good job, and don't want to talk about it at all. I went to several fish fries over the weekend, or brat fries, fundraisers for snowmobile clubs or churches or what have you. And given that there's so much going on in the news, it surprises me how little people want to talk about it.
People may be getting a little bit overwhelmed by so many things that are happening in the world right now.
Well, maybe it doesn't affect them today, and of course it affects the price of gas, and that affects them. But otherwise, I don't think the war in Iran or the fact that in some airports, not the Milwaukee airport, but the fact that in some airports you're delayed getting out does not affect the average person. So that's why they don't talk about it. But to be honest, that's my experience.
Our guest is U.S. Representative Glen Grothmann on this edition of Community Comment. We need to take a break right here, but we'll be right back. You're listening to 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Shop the pig!
Community Comment. Here's Terry Bell.
Thank you very much, Jake, and welcome back to Community Comment, everyone. Our guest this half hour is Congressman Glen Grothmann. If you have any questions or comments for the Congressman, we still have a few minutes left. You can call us or text us at 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. You mentioned earlier, Congressman, that you were experiencing relatively few issues traveling when it comes to the partial government shutdown and the TSA or workers working unpaid. Do you expect, at what point, I guess, would there be a breaking point when something, needs to be done?
Well, I would like to get it done right away. The underlying, so first of all, so your listeners understand, most of the government checks, about 70%, they're on what they call mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare. That always goes out even if you hear there's a government shutdown. About a third of the government is dependent upon government passing what we call appropriation bills. And we divide those into 12 separate bills. 11 of those 12 bills have passed. So the only bill that is not passed comprises only a little over 1% of government spending, and that's the Homeland Security portion of our annual appropriation bills. President Trump is able to declare part of our Homeland Security budget an essential service and keep that part open. And that's why things like TSA continue to operate. However, they're not getting paid. And the sooner they get paid, the better. I think we have a little bit of a problem here in that a disagreement has sprung up over ICE, which is part of the Homeland Security budget. That is a necessary part of the budget if you are going to enforce our immigration laws. And one of the problems we have is the Democrat Party does not think that that is that important. You'll recall during the Biden administration, we had 8 to 9 million people across the southern border. And, they weren't stopped. They were just let in the country, which is kind of the official position of the Democrat Party. They don't care if ICE is not operating, and somehow we have to get them to the negotiating table and agree to fund them. I will point out, by the way, that we have a huge number of people coming in this country illegally. Every year, about 800,000 new citizens are sworn in, which is about 6 times the number that were being sworn in when I was a child. So, people are coming here. And right now we're at a position in our country in about 1/6 of the people in America today were born in another country. That's the all-time high. Even going back to the 1800s, we never before had a situation in which 1 out of 6 Americans were foreign-born.
Before we go, I know we just have a few minutes today. I know you were keen to talk about the Vice President's task force on government fraud.
Right. I was able to meet with the Vice President, and hopefully he'll still have time to do something. This was on the very day that we began the war with Iran. But I met with him, and I am very concerned about the welfare situation, not just the fraud, but I want to have them do something or other on the huge marriage penalty. Right now we're in a situation in which a single parent may get, say, $25,000 a year in benefits between low-income housing, food stamps, that sort of thing. And if they get married to somebody with an income, that $25,000 disappears. So in essence, in America, we have a policy of punishing people about $25,000 a year if they get married. And that's got to end. There are people of all sorts of backgrounds who do a wonderful job in raising their children. But nevertheless, I think it's time America stopped discriminating against people who get married before they have children. And I'm glad to see that the Vice President believes we ought to do something about that as well.
How about fraud itself? Where do you think the biggest problems lie?
When the government's giving out money, we have learned in the last 6 months just about everywhere. Certainly food stamps. Certainly in daycare services, people have been abusing the system. Certainly in Medicaid anywhere where you submit paperwork and the government has to make a payment, they've been doing it. I think part of the problem is a lot of these programs have been run by state governments, but they've been funded by federal governments, and therefore some state governments, particularly governments that don't mind shelling out unlimited money like Minnesota or California, New York, you're going to have huge amounts of fraud. And I think we're going to continue to have that until we have the states themselves pay for part of these programs. I think at a minimum, the states ought to be paying for at least 20% of the food stamp program, because if they're not paying for it, states like Minnesota have shown they don't care how much money they ship out the door.
One concern is that when you go after fraud, it can actually make things more difficult to legitimately need a temporary hand up. What do we do to protect those folks?
No, just by going after fraud, it just means you're monitoring more checks that go out the door. We're not going to have a problem with that. No, we're not shutting down the programs altogether. We're just saying that if the state has more skin in the game, there will be less fraud.
So if this works out the way it's intended, what changes might people actually see in their regular day-to-day lives for the better?
You mean as far as the fraud?
Well, yeah, if, like I say, the whole, if the goals of the task force are met,
I don't think it's going to affect the average person. It's going to affect the type of people who are committing the fraud, making lots of money on it. Their income is obviously going to drop. But I think for the average person, it's just one of the things that has to be done to get the budget under control. And if you have less debt, you begin to get the inflation under control.
We just have a minute or two left. Congressman, anything else you'd like to talk about this morning?
No, I'll be back again this weekend. And if any of you see me, come up and say you saw me on the Daily Dodge.
Terrific. What events do you plan to be at? People could have a chance to talk to you.
I usually try to get, I'm sure this Friday, I'll try to get at a couple fish fries. I don't know if I'll make one in Beaver Dam. I know I'm planning on getting one in Winneconne and Menasha. But if there are any rot fries in the area, I do try to show up there.
Very good. Congressman Glen Grothmann, it's been a pleasure having you with us again.
Well, glad to be on the show, as always.
Thank you very much. We need to take a break for the news. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some troubling statistics we've come across about fire deaths in Wisconsin in the home and what we can maybe do to prevent that. Our guest will be with the Wisconsin State Fire Inspectors Association. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. Time now for the news. You're listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
And now, without further ado, in the Daily Dodge TV studios, here is Terry Bell.
We're sorry about the delay, Jake. Thank you, and welcome back, everybody, to Community Comment. Our guest for the second half hour today is Kenny Asselin. He's with the Wisconsin State Fire Inspectors Association. He's a member of the board. We're going to be talking about a fact that jumped out at me when I first came across it. This year is only not quite 3 months old, and already in Wisconsin, 18 people have died in home fires across the state. That struck me as unusually high. Kenny's numbers back my hunch up on that. And we're going to talk more about that and how to stay safe in your home from fires. If you would like to join the conversation, we invite you to do so at 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. Kenny Asselin, thanks for joining us on Community Comments.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me into the studio. It's great to be able to talk about fire safety. And like you talked about, fire deaths are not heavily on the rise, but it's an uptick. Not the numbers we had in the 1980s and 1990s, and we've made a lot of great strides, but it's great to be in here to talk about the issue and fire safety in general.
Yeah, now 18 in less than 3 months, that would put us on track for 72 people to be killed in home fires in Wisconsin this year. And the previous record was 57 in 2025. So we're off to a very bad start here this year.
Yeah, so 57 in 2025, that was a 15-year high. So back in the 1980s and in the 1990s, and they had a number of fire deaths in the city of Milwaukee. So Dan Gengler, who was deputy chief at the time, he started the Wisconsin Alliance for Fire Safety, really pushed hard to get fire safety in the homes, get smoke alarms in the homes, and a push for fire sprinklers into apartment buildings and multifamily residential. So we had that trend tick upward. We did a really good job in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now we start to see these numbers tick up. It really started to happen during COVID when people were home, and we hit 52 in 2020. We went down to 40 in 2021, but then those numbers have been slowly ticking upward into areas where we in the fire service really don't want to see those numbers. So again, like let's say somebody might say 57 for 2025 in Wisconsin. That's not that many. Well, most of these are preventable. And for those of us in the fire service, the only acceptable number of civilian home fire deaths is 0.
So what accounts for this? Because you would think over time, conditions would get better, that we would have fewer deaths in the home due to fires. So what's going on? Why are the numbers going in the wrong direction?
Well, I think one of them might be smoke alarms. So the National Fire Protection Association has their statistic that 3 out of every 5 civilian home fire deaths occur in homes with no smoke alarms or no working smoke alarms. So there are a number of people who, in their homes, because like let's say with the baby boomers, when there was legacy materials in the home, it was okay just to have one smoke alarm on each level. The bigger problem we have now is a lot of the materials that we have in our homes, and I get made fun of all the time by the training officer at West Bend, Bob Monday, because I always say that a lot of the stuff we have in our homes, like the plastics, is just solid gasoline. But that's true. It's made out of hydrocarbon materials. They burn hot, they burn fast, and they release a lot of toxic chemicals. So if you have a fire that starts, it's going to burn very hot, going to burn very fast, put a lot of toxic chemicals in the air, displace the oxygen, and the people are going to probably be dying in their sleep without ever knowing that there's a fire, without hearing the smoke alarm, and because you should have smoke alarms inside each bedroom, outside the bedrooms, and on every level of your home. They should be hardwired and interconnected. That way, if one goes off, they all go off. But we have these issues with all of the hydrocarbon-based materials in our homes. One of the other issues is lithium-ion batteries. So lithium-ion battery fires have really been taking off. As a matter of fact, it is illegal in New York City to charge an e-bike or an e-scooter in a multifamily residential occupancy because of the number of fires they've had from the lithium-ion batteries.
Okay. And it just seems like it could happen anywhere. There was a tragedy in Minnesota. The reporter for the Minnesota hockey team. She and her young children died in a fire. Here's someone who you'd think would have every advantage and kind of be safe from this sort of thing, but it happened to her.
Right. I was just reading that as I was sitting in the waiting room earlier. So again, we don't know all the details of that. We don't know the age of her home. We don't know if she had working smoke alarms, because again, like let's say with smoke alarms, so that was one of my biggest projects when I worked with the West Bend Fire Department before I retired last year was the smoke alarm install program. So if you have smoke alarms in your home, because again, people are not checking the batteries. We talk all the time about changing your batteries when you change your clocks. So those people that have battery operated or replaceable battery operated smoke alarms are not replacing the batteries, and they'll end up with dead smoke alarms when a fire occurs. They're not testing their smoke alarms once a month, so they don't even know if those smoke alarms are working. So I would go into homes and I would see old smoke alarms, because the other part of the thing is to replace your smoke alarms every 10 years. Those smoke alarms will wear out. Those sensors are not as sensitive, and the speakers can go bad as well. So there was lots of times where I would go replacing old smoke alarms, and I would test them first just before I would replace them, just to make sure to see if they were working. And I had one lady say to me, well, it worked last time. And I'm like, well, it's not working now. That's why you have to make sure to test these once a month and to make sure that your smoke alarms are working.
It just goes to show. What about, it seems as though maybe people might be slacking off their planned escape route drills, so to speak. I mean, just like at work or at school, it's important to have a plan and practice it a few times at home.
Exactly. So this would be a prime example. Let's say with this, when we talk about the Minnesota Wild reporter, and she had 3 small children who died in the home. We do not know if they ever practiced their escape plan. So the biggest thing is to make sure not only to develop your escape plan, but to make sure to practice it, and even practicing it when in the evening hours when it's dark out, because again, children need to know how to either escape out the window. A lot of children that may live on have their bedrooms on a second floor may need some sort of escape ladder to be able to get out of that window and get down to the ground level. And then also having a meeting place. So making sure that everybody gets to that meeting place and making sure that everybody's accounted for, because the fire service, so we will, the late great Chief Alan Brunacini used to say, we'll risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little, risk nothing to save nothing. So if there is still people in the home, the fire service will make every attempt to get into that home and rescue that person if that's possible to make that rescue.
Is there any help out there in terms of maybe, strategizing that? Can you contact anybody to help you formulate an escape route plan, or get a hold of fire alarms?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the fire departments in the state do have a smoke alarm install program. So that was one of the things I was really, really proud of with the West Bend Fire Department. We partnered with the Red Cross. So the Red Cross does give 3 smoke alarms per household. And so we partnered with them and we got 3 free, which is great. And then also had other opportunities such as Safe Kids and the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin Charitable Foundation, which wrote a grant to get a lot of smoke alarms to be able to put in people's homes. So a number of fire departments throughout the state do have smoke alarm install programs. If your fire department does not have a smoke alarm install program, you can contact the Red Cross, and I believe it's soundthealarm.org. So it's on the Red Cross website. It's the Sound the Alarm page, and they will find somebody, a Red Cross volunteer, to install smoke alarms in your home.
Oh, that's fantastic. How about coming up with an escape plan? Are there resources to help you with that?
Yeah, so that's actually part of the program. So we would actually spend time, especially if it's a home with children, making sure that there is an escape plan. There is a model escape plan template. So the UL Fire Safety Research Institute has it on their website. I actually had a number of those that I would take with me and hand out to people. It's part of the Close Before You Doze program. So the FSRI has the Close Before You Doze program, where they have the template and you can draw your escape plan, and that also makes sure that you are sleeping with your bedroom door closed, because the Fire can get up to 1,000 degrees or more in the living room, kitchen, dining room, but the FSRI has actually had studies that show that a closed bedroom door will hold back fire for upwards of 20 minutes, maybe even longer for most of those rated doors in your home.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, and I get it a lot and I don't either, because we have 2 cats and a dog that are constantly coming in and out all night, so we don't sleep with our bedroom doors closed. My house was built in 1930, so we live just east of downtown West Bend because it's just a beautiful area to live, and so our house is older, so we can't do hardwired interconnected smoke alarms. We do not have our bedroom doors closed when we sleep at night, but in the same token, I've got 15 smoke alarms in my home. I've gone way above and beyond because I don't want the headline to read, former fire captain of fire prevention dies in house fire. So I want to make sure that if I have a fire in my home, that smoke alarms start going off. And the other side of that is that if you have enough smoke alarms in your home, let's say you're not home and a fire starts in your house, people are going to hear those smoke alarms going off outside. So the sooner that 911 is called and the sooner the fire department gets on scene, that'll also help reduce the damage. So making sure, again, you have enough smoke alarms throughout your entire home, and then when you're sleeping at night, close before you doze.
Our guest on Community Comment is Kenny Asselin. He's a board member of the Wisconsin State Fire Inspectors Association. We're talking about home fire safety, especially in light of the fact that 18 people have died in home fires in Wisconsin so far this year. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. You're listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
WBEV in the Daily Dodge TV studios. Here's Terry Bell.
Thank you very much, Jake, and welcome back, everybody, to Community Comment. Our guest this half hour is Kenny Asselin. He's a board member of the Wisconsin State Fire Inspectors Association. We're talking about the fact that 18 people have died in Wisconsin house fires so far this year. And Wisconsin would be on track to set a record if that trend continues. Hopefully, of course, it does not. But we thought that it was a good opportunity to talk about fire safety. If you have any questions or comments for our guests today, you can call us or text us at 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. And Kenny, I believe you mentioned when we were off the air that the high number, and it is a high number that we've had so far this year, but you also told me that home fire fatalities tend to be higher in wintertime. So hopefully we're getting out of the woods here.
Right, yeah, because heating is the number 2 cause of home fires. So usually during the winter months, so of course January, February, March, and then going back into November, December is when we do see those upticks in home fire deaths and home fires as well. Because December is the number 1 month for residential fires overall of the 12 months, because one has to be higher than the other, but that's when we start really getting into the heating season. And whether it is something wrong with the furnace, whether it's a wood-burning stove, whether it's a fireplace, we often see issues in the wintertime with heating-related fires.
Okay, so let's talk about the top 5 causes of home fires. In addition to, obviously heating would be one of them. What are the others?
Okay, so the National Fire Protection Association, they take the data. So when a fire department has a fire, they respond with the equipment, and then afterwards they make a report. And then the report is submitted to the U.S. Fire Administration. It used to be NFIRS, which was the National Fire Incident Reporting System, and now it's NARIS, the National Emergency Response Information System. So NFPA does a really great job of putting together the statistics and came up with their 5 top causes of home fires. So in order, it is cooking, heating, electrical, smoking, and candles. So when we're talking about all the fire safety issues, like let's say cooking is the number 1 cause of house fires. Unattended cooking is the number 1 cause of cooking fires. So we always tell people, watch what you heat, because there's so many instances where people are putting stuff onto the stovetop, putting stuff into the oven, and forgetting about it and not setting timers and everything like that. So when we're going to talk about our prevention messaging, again, I watch what you heat, stand by your pan, whatever you want to call it. Never leave any cooking food unattended on the stove or in the oven. And one of the other things is the big thing, and I cannot believe how many times this happens, check the oven before you turn it on. So the oven is not meant to be storage. And I can't tell you how many times I can tell you 2 right off the top of my head that happened in West Bend. One of them was they left some plastic containers in the oven. I don't know who stores plastic containers in the oven, but somebody else turned it on and to preheat the oven without looking first. Another one was somebody put some biscuits in the oven and were letting them thaw before they were going to start the oven. A family member that was visiting decided to turn that oven on, and that caused the fire, and they left too. So the apartment was unattended at the time, and those biscuits started on fire. Another instance where somebody accidentally bumped the stove, so they had a plastic bowl with plastic utensils on top of the stovetop, accidentally bumped the knob to turn it on. And I actually recreated this. So I was able to recreate it, so it was legit. And it was in an apartment building that was not sprinklered. And they bumped it, walked back to the bedroom, heard a poof. So what had happened was they started the stovetop. It burned up that bowl with the plastic utensils, and the previous manager of the apartment building put a stovetop fire stop, which is like a little canister that has fire extinguisher material in it, and that just happened to activate and just basically save the building. So there's so many times where people are doing things that they should not be doing. So again, make sure your stovetop is clear. Make sure you're setting a timer so that you know that you have something on the oven or in the oven and on the stove, or don't get distracted. So the City of Madison Fire Department just recently had a sprinkler save where somebody had something cooking on the stovetop. There was something going on in the hallway that distracted them. And then, of course, they were out in the hallway longer than they were expecting to be. And then they had a fire on their stovetop. The sprinkler system activated and suppressed that fire.
And in the kitchen these days, we have so many more appliances than just the stove. We have blenders and air fryers and just about anything you used to hand operate, you now plug in and is powered now. And I'm guessing this creates more opportunity for bad things to happen.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have some of these things that are not UL listed, so the Underwriter Laboratory should have a listing on these, and a lot of the things that people are buying on Amazon or other places that are coming in from overseas, and they're not developed to the standard. And so then we end up with a lot of electrical fires from unlisted equipment that, whether it's some sort of small coffee maker or something like that, any heat-producing appliance within the kitchen can start a fire.
So we've got cooking, heating. What are some of the other leading causes?
Yeah, well, we can
of
talk about the
fire?
heating because space heaters need space. So if you do have a space heater, make sure you have at least a 3-foot distance around that space heater. Because again, space heaters too close to any combustible materials can start them on fire. And then with your furnace, make sure you have your furnace serviced annually. And when we go through electrical, so we're also going to include the lithium-ion battery safety tips with the electrical. And so we want to talk about not overloading outlets. Mm-hmm. So remember, the amperes are only limited for, like, let's say if you want to plug a refrigerator in, you can plug that refrigerator in if there's enough amps to that outlet, but you really can't plug a lot of other things in there.
And it's pretty easy to overwhelm extension cords, even power strips.
Yes, and remember that power strips are really only meant for small electronics. I can't tell you how many times that we see power strips, and again, this is not just in residential, but also when I was doing fire inspections for the West Bend Fire Department, that you would see people plugging larger appliances, whether it be a microwave, whether it be a dehumidifier, anything like that. The power strips are only meant for small electronics. And you want to plug your appliances directly into the outlet. You do not want to use an extension cord or the power strip to plug your appliances in.
Okay.
And then, well, we can back up into the lithium-ion batteries as well, because so the lithium-ion batteries, and like I said, with the issues in New York, we have a whole, because this kind of counts into the electrical as well. So we never want to leave batteries charging when you're not home, and never charge batteries when you're sleeping. So one of the last fires that I had with West Bend was the charging gloves and socks. So for hunting, and there's a video that we actually have from that fire that was in the garage, and you could see the fire starting about 5 a.m. So you want to make sure that you never, ever, ever leave lithium-ion batteries charging when they're not attended. So if you want, and the bigger problems with lithium-ion batteries, so you got to watch for signs of damage. So if you have a strange odor, a change in color, heat coming from the battery, a change in shape where it might pop open, leaking or odd noises, you need to discard that battery. So make sure to recycle them. Do not throw them in the trash, because some of the problems that the fire service is experiencing is a larger number of lithium-ion battery fires in garbage trucks. So it gets dumped into the load. Of course, when it gets crushed, then of course that battery gets popped open. Those layers within the battery then heat up. It's called thermal runaway. So we want to make sure that we are disposing of them properly, because otherwise the garbage truck has to dump the load. Again, not a big danger in that instance, but it just increases the cost to the garbage. And then also making sure because when they get to the transfer stations, they also start fires. So
where should we be taking those batteries instead of throwing them out?
There's a lot of places that do have recycling programs. I think Home Depot is one of them. So you can visit batterynetwork.org for more information on where to take those batteries, because it will give you your closest place by zip code to be able to dispose of those lithium-ion batteries.
Okay. Tale as old as time, but smoking causes fires.
And which is amazing to me that people are still smoking as much as they are, because with not only the price of cigarettes, but like let's say all the dangers we know that go with them. So remember to discard smoking materials properly. So make sure if we're going to put out cigarettes, and making sure we douse them with water, make sure they are completely out. So we actually had, there's been a number of fires that have started with smoking, and one of the other big problems is smoking on home oxygen. So I'm actually part of a HOT group, so it's Home Oxygen Therapy Working Group. So Chief Ray Reynolds from Iowa, so he is on the International Association of Fire Chiefs Fire and Life Safety section, and he has been a big proponent of making sure that we are telling people not to smoke on home oxygen. And there are some thermal fuses that you can buy to put into the in line that will actually stop the flow of oxygen if the tubing does start on fire. So again, it's not the solution that we want, but it's the best worst case solution, because there are people who are on home oxygen. They're on home oxygen because they were smoking. They do not want to give up smoking, so we make sure that we either stop smoking while on home oxygen, or we can install these thermal fuses to stop the flow of oxygen if the tubing does start on fire.
Well, the time went by really fast. Kenny Asselin, want to mention candles are the other cause of home fires, of the top 5 causes of home fires. So, Kenny Asselin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. And hopefully, I'm always willing to come back if you need more fire safety.
We'll have you back for sure. You've been listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hey.